Hey guys, welcome to Rosie's Dessert Spot. Today we'll be making these fun acorn style miniature cakes and also the rose variety as well. So you'll need some cupcakes or some leftover cake, maybe the tops of your cake for example. You can save those, crumble them into a bowl and then add in some dark chocolate ganache or even some buttercream. Ganache is a little bit more forgiving. If you do add too much ganache, it just means you'll end up with a firmer cake pop, whereas if you add too much buttercream you'll end up with a soft mess. So if you can go the ganache option, it'll be much better. Knead it in the bowl until it all clumps together. You can add more buttercream as you go if you need to, but I don't recommend adding a whole bunch at once. Add in slowly so you don't overdo it. Roll it into a log, divide it into however many you'd like to make. I've got 3 here. Giving it a bit of a roll into a ball, and then I'm pitching on one side. That way it creates like a arancini sort of shape or like a cone shape. Stick it to a cake board. This is a 4-inch cake board with a little bit more of that chocolate frosting. You could use ganache instead or buttercream. I kind of mixed mine together. Pop them into the freezer to set for a good 10 minutes. That way they don't move around while we're decorating. For the rose style ones, I've just got some white buttercream. Recipe will be linked in the eye icon up top and in the description box below. Color them with some gel food color and then popping them into a piping bag that's fitted with a 104 piping tip. For the acorn ones, I've got some brown frosting instead, or brown buttercream. And I'm just going to pipe a whole bunch on top of our little cone here. I've got an offset spatula to help me smooth it out all over the top, and basically we want to create this crumb coat so that if you do see through the petals, it's going to be the same color, so it's totally camouflage and very, very forgiving. Create 3 really short and tight kind of petals at the very top, and then overlay as you move down the cone. These are basically just arches that I'm creating with a 104 piping tip. Skinny side of the tip is facing up, thick side is facing against the cake. Move all the way down to the bottom and you'll notice that they become longer and longer as I move down to the bottom. Pop them into the fridge to set and then work on your roses. So basically these are going to be much shorter. I'm building it directly onto that 4-inch cake board here. It's more like a teeny tiny circular pyramid. And then again creating that crumb coat just to make sure that you can't see through the petals underneath. I find it a lot easier to move my spatula up and down rather than side to side, and it doesn't mess with the shape as much this way as well. For this one I'm creating like a little circular bud at the top, giving it a bit of a zigzag to give it some shape, and then creating those tiny petals at the top. I'm slightly overlapping each one as I go, and notice as I get further and further down they become longer and longer. If you can't quite reach the base because your hand gets in the way of the turntable, just elevate it onto something so you can get down to the very base. Refrigerate again, and then if you wanted to, they do look pretty cool when they're super tall as well. It looks a little bit less like a rose, but it's still a very interesting kind of design, so I'm definitely not going to knock it. Again, just following those exact same steps. If you're enjoying these tutorials, feel free to subscribe. We do upload 2 new videos every week. You can notice here that the piping tip is facing straight up. Notice as I get further and further down towards the bottom, I start to fan it out sideways. This basically opens up those petals and gives it a bit more of a full looking effect. And by this point, it's basically facing completely away from me rather than straight up. So I have it on a horizontal now rather than a vertical. For the leaves, you could use a number 352 piping tip and some green buttercream. This is a 67 piping tip instead. It's got a little bit more texture right in the middle, but either one will do the job. These have all been resting in the fridge, so if they get knocked or anything, the petals will stay nice and firm. I recommend popping them back into the fridge after the leaves have been piped. Time to set the mood. I've got some autumn leaves here and I'm just going to place them on my little photography display backdrop thing, and on goes a little bit of icing sugar for snow and effect. I recommend even using some dark chocolate ganache to pipe these petals because there is a lot of buttercream. It's a much nicer experience when you bite into chocolate ganache than it is when you bite into a grainy buttercream. But anyway, these still look pretty awesome. You could use fresh cream instead. Could you imagine how nice that would taste? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next one.